Hello, so you should be able to see my screen now. This video is going to go over how to look at the effects of these antlerless moose hunts that were done in interior Alaska. These hunts were done to avoid a moose population crash. The moose basically were getting really populated, eating the vegetation, and they were afraid that if the moose population got much higher, it would destroy the vegetation, thus leading to a crash. And so in 2004, they started some liberalist cow hunts, so female moose, and that lasted through the 2007 season. So we're going to look at the years prior to the moose hunts, the years of the moose hunt, and then after the moose hunt. So first what we need to do is open up ArcGIS. I have it pinned here to my bar on the bottom of my screen. It's a big program, it takes a while to open, and I'm just going to start a new project. I'm going to go to a folder. I'm going to save it in a known location. So for my class, I have a different folder. Typically what I do is I have my computer and I have a GIS drive, so only GIS products are on this drive. You can create something off of your C drive if you want to, so C and then GIS, and keep all your GIS information in there. I would not mix it with any other information, but I'm going to go to where I'm storing my stuff for the class. So I'll just navigate to where I'm saving things. Yours is going to be different wherever you want to save things. So GIS, hunting regs, and I'm going to save it there. That's my project location. I don't really need to create a new folder for this project, and I'm going to call it Moose Hunting AK. It's actually version 2 for me. I never have spaces in any of my stuff. I always use underscores to represent spaces, and then hit OK. Alright, so in your data that you received this week, you should have received this CSV file with moose harvest data, and then a subunits zip folder file. This is the game management units. So when you hear GMUs, that means game management units. I'm going to unzip this here because we're going to want to use this data, so extract here. And as you can see, this is a shape file with many different files that make it a shape file in ArcGIS. I'm going to ask you to zip up your final product and email it to me. What you're going to do is you're going to want to select all of these files and then right click, and you could do like send to compressed zip folder. That works. Add to archive. It depends what you have on your computer. I could say send to compressed zip, and now I have this, and I could call it Jen's. Put your last name. So that would be mine. And now I would email that to the professor. I'm going to delete that for now because we don't need it. So go back to ArcGIS. You created a new project here. Now I'm going to add data. First thing we're going to do is we're going to go to that folder, and I want you to add the CSV file that you downloaded. Alright, so let's take a look at this. So you right click and you go to open. I never use CSV files in ArcGIS. I mean, you can add them easily, but ArcGIS does not really like to use CSV files. If you try to do like field calculations, try to add a field, it's not going to play well. So the very first thing that I want to do is I want to turn this into a DBF, which is the type of file that ArcGIS likes for tables. So right click on it again, go down to Data, Export Table. Alright, I'm going to go and select the folder where I'm going to put this, so my output table. I'm going to go to that same location where I have my hunting regulations. This is the project that I've created. And I'm going to select a modified data. For me, you know, I have my raw data, which I don't touch, I don't mess with. If something goes wrong, I can always go back to this file and start all over. I strongly recommend that you have a raw data folder and leave your untouched data there. And then create like another folder. In this case, I called it modified data, where this is where I'm going to actually start working with this data set. So I double click and go in there. And this is actually, I'm going to call it Moose Data. And this is actually 2000 to 2011. So I want you to save this file as a DBF and call it moose_data 2000 to 2011. That way when I look at this file, I know what it is. And then hit save. And then everything is fine. You don't have to mess with anything else. Just hit OK. And it will be exporting. One of the things you'll notice is that I can't really see how many records are in this data set when it's a CSV. It's just 0 out of 2000 plus, 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 plus. So we'll have much more information once this gets converted into a DBF. Alright, I'm back. You can see it's nearly completed here. Alright, in case I did that a little bit too quickly, the way that you do that is you highlight this CSV file and you right click on it, go to Data, and then go to Export Table, and then navigate to where you want to save this. I have it in my modified folder, DBF, and then save. I'm not going to do it again because I already did it. Alright, so now we can close this table. Let's take a look at our data. Right click and then go down to Open. And we're looking at our attribute table. And we see it didn't look like it messed it up too much. You know, columns aren't shifted. All the data is here. We'll notice that there are blank places. So null values here. We'll just want to pay attention to the null values. They'll become important. And it has, you know, information as far as did the person hunt. Every permit in this database was hunted. So these actually aren't individual hunters. These are permits. A hunter can have multiple permits, but just really these are permits or hunts. This killed column means they successfully harvested a moose or did not. So you have successful and unsuccessful permits in this database. So we're going to want to use this database to summarize the number of hunts and the number of kills or harvests over the years by this column called Game Management Unit, and that's GMU. This is a very important field, this GMU. So pay attention to that. And when we hover over it, I can see it's a text field. So that's important. So let's add our shape file, which is a shape file of these game management units. So we'll go back to Add Data, navigate to our folder. We unzipped this this file, so now we can see it here. We'll click Add, and I'll make this a little smaller. We don't need this taking up space. All right, these are game management units. These are the level at which hunting regulations occur. And I'm going to add some labels just so we can see what these are called. So I'll right click on subunits and I'll go to label, and it chose the right thing. I can see I can go up here to labeling, and it chose this field called unit sub. So if I right click and look at the attribute table, we have, this is our GMU column. It's called unit sub here, but these are the game management units. So if I click and hold, I can bring this over here and snap it to there, and I can see that this GMU looks a lot like this column in here. These are going to be the columns that link these two databases, so very important. If I scroll down, let me just sort these. You can see we have 22B in here, we have 22D in here. So this is our linking fields, GMU and sub label. All right. So for now I'm going to close this attribute table. All right. These are our hunts, and it has information on our harvests. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I want to add a field called hunts. And basically all of these are hunts. And I'm going to want to add a field called kills to identify kills. We're going to want to sum up by that. So go to this add here, add a new field, and I'm going to call it hunts. Hunts. And we'll leave it alone because we're just going to make this a value of 1 or 0. And we're going to add a field called kills. Kills. And we're going to leave it as a long. It's 1 or 0, so long is fine. Then we're going to go up to save and hit save. Anyone happen to notice how many records are in our database? I think it's around 250,000 records. Annually, I think I read that around 7,000 to 8,000 moose are harvested. It's still saving here. Alright, so it has saved. I'm going to close this. Alright, so I'm going to go to the end. I guess we have 150,790 records. It's always good to keep track of how many your records have, because if suddenly you have fewer records, you've lost part of your data. Alright, so this hunts field, we just want to give it a value of 1 because we're going to want to add it up later. So right click on hunts and go calculate field. And we have our table here. This is the table we're working with. The field name that we're going to calculate is the hunts field here and here. You're really actually coding in Python, but don't worry, you don't have to do any Python coding. We want hunts to equal 1. So just put a value of 1 there and then hit OK. So it's going to make all these values change from 0 and going to change to 1. So that way later we can sum up the number of hunts by game management unit and by year. Because remember, there's a year field in here too. The ultimate goal is to look at what are the total hunts or harvests before our cow hunts went into effect, during our cow hunts, and then after our cow hunts. And we want to see if we can see spatially a change in where hunters were going and where moose were being harvested. Alright, we're almost done here. There we go. We got that field calculated. So now this field should all be a value of 1. Alright, so we want to do the same thing to this kills column. But the only time we want this to be a 1 is when a moose was actually harvested. So we have this field called killed. And so we want to select all the records when it says yes, a Y, and have that kill column be equal to a 1. So we use the select by attributes. And we're going to find our killed field here. And I'll make this a little wider. It says is equal to, and we want it to be yes, so Y. And so we'll hit OK. And so now what it's doing is selecting all the records when they were successfully harvested. So you can see the cyan color here is selected. And now we go back over to our field calculator, click on it, right click, go to field calculate, and we want a 1 when it was successful. So this is only going to update the rows that are selected. It's going to leave these other unsuccessful hunts as 0. So we hit OK. And now it'll update these two, for example, with a 1 and a 1. These will remain 0. This will get a 1, and so on. Alright, so it has completed now, and we have 1s and we have 0. So it's always good to look over your data, make sure it's behaving in the way that you want it to. All right, so let's clear our records, because it's always a danger when we have things selected, we accidentally export only that data and lose part of our data. You know, weird things happen. So we'll clear it. Okay. So now what we want is we want to determine the hunts that have occurred by game management unit over the years. And so I'm going to come over here, and we have our year field and we have our game management field. So I can click on this game management field with my right click, and I can drag it, and I'll just put it right next to there. I'll actually put it on this side. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to right click, and we're going to go to summarize. So this will allow us to summarize how many moose were harvested and how many hunts occurred for each game management unit across the years. So we'll see, here's our table. This is going to be the output table. I would change this, just click on it, and let's call this GMU underscore moose underscore hunts. Okay, and then just click off of it, like there, click. So this actually is going to store in this temporary database that's on your computer. Don't worry about it for now. It's a temporary file that we're going to use. So right now we have it selected so that it summarizes by GMU, because we right clicked on GMU and then we went to summarize. But we also want to summarize by year. So let's click year here. And the field that we are interested in summing up for this example is, let's do hunts. Keep it simple. So we're going to total up the number of hunts by game management unit and year. And then click OK. It's running. Not too bad. All right. So you know, when you do this, again, I warn you, make sure you have no records selected, because if you do this and you have records selected, it's only going to do those few records you have selected. So let's right click on our file and let's open it and take a look at it. Interesting. All right. So there were some records that did not have any game management units to them. Basically, people did not put down where they harvested their moose at all. Okay. And then we have our game management units, and we have our years. This frequency is just basically the same as the sum of the hunts. You're just totaling up the number. In this case, this was the number of rows, and each row had a value of 1, so it's the number of hunts. Okay. We can do this exact same process for kills. So looking at the number of moose harvested. So again, we have game management unit here. Click on the top. Now right click, your mouse so that this pops up, and then go to summarize. And here again, we're going to summarize by game management unit. And we're going to summarize by year again. But this time we're going to choose kills, and we're going to sum up the total moose harvested by GMU and year. And we're going to change our title up here. So instead of game management moose hunts, we're going to say harvest. Okay. Click off of it. There you go. All right, click OK. Now in this one, when we look at the attribute table, and this is a table that's created, will the frequency be the same as the summed column? See if you can guess. It will not, because not every row was a 1. So if we go back to our moose data, what the frequency is it's just a count of every single row. What the sum column is summing up when this value in this column. So in this case, our frequency would equal to 4, because we have 4 rows selected. Our sum would be equal to 2, because there's only 2 ones in that selected rows. All right. So looking at this, we can see there's a lot more. This actually is the hunts here, and you can kind of get success rates by looking at this. But okay, so now we have our data summarized. One of the things is I'm looking at the game management unit, and it starts at 19A, and let's see what it goes to. So click on the top and go up to sort descending, and it goes to 25Z. So I'm looking at my file here and my shape file, and I have like 26A, I have 2Z, 1A. I have a lot more game management units than what's represented in my data. So it might be nice just to get rid of these so my computer processes faster. All right, so what I'm going to do is close this, clear my selection here, close this. I'm going to open up this hunts, so right click on it and go to open. All right, so what I want to do is I want to find out which game management units in here actually have data. So what I'm going to do is I want to delete these GMUs because they're blank, they mean nothing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these records, so click your right button, hold and drag down, and see how these are all highlighted here. Now what you're going to want to do is go, actually you can go right here and just say delete. It's going to delete these from the database because they don't mean anything to us. We have no idea where these people were. So hit delete. Alright, now they're gone. So I'm going to come over here and right click, and I'm just going to sort the database one way. I'm going to sort the database the other way, and okay. We have all of our game management units. There's no blanks. So now go up to table, actually go up to edit and hit save. Okay, I'm going to do this for the harvest one again, so right click on harvest, go to open, and I'm going to right click on GMU, and I'm going to sort ascending, and again highlight these blank GMU ones, they're of no use to us, and go up to delete. Okay, then go up to edit and then hit save. Data management, cleaning things up is very, very important, so you just got to stay on top of it. Alright, so I'm going to close down this harvest, and I'm going to look here at this moose hunts. So one of the ways that I can find out which, spatial information I want to save is by doing a join. So I'm going to join this table here, which summarizes how many hunts we have by game management unit and tells us which game management units we actually have data for. I'm going to join this to this spatial information. And when there's no information joined, that means the game management unit is not useful for us. It's not in our database and we don't need it. So let's go to our shape file here, click on it, and then let's open the attribute table, right click and go to attribute table. Okay, so I want to do a join. I'm going to click here and bring this over here, drag it over here and snap it so you can see the 2 fields. Our fields that are common are this unit, subunit, which is in our shape file, and game management unit, which is in our summarized statistics file. Alright, so I'm going to make sure my subunit table is highlighted, so click on subunits here. And then I'm going to go up to table, and then I'm going to go to joins. I want to add a join. So click add a join. Alright, so this can be a little bit confusing, so don't worry if you kind of struggle with this at first. This is a process we do a lot in GIS analysis, so there'll be plenty of repetition. So our input table is our subunits, and remember this was the table that was highlighted when we went up and said add a join. So this is going to be our destination table. So the data is going to end up in this table. The table that we're joining to our subunits is we want this table here. We want this GMU underscore moose underscore hunts. So we need to select that here. So right there. So that's the join table, the table that's being joined over to this table. Now the columns that were in common are this unit, subunit. So that's going to be in this first table. And the column in common here is this GMU table. And ArcGIS is smart enough to know, hey, these two fields look alike. That's one reason I always recommend that you choose your join table first, because it'll be smart enough sometimes to figure out what you want to do. And we just don't mess with anything else. It's all good. And just hit OK. And now you see these columns appear in our spatial data, our subunits. So we notice there's a lot of nulls here. This is because this database that we had over here started at 19A. There is no data for 1A, 1B, 3. When we get down to 19A, we suddenly start to see data. Okay? So joins are only temporary, and I want to keep this join, and so we want to export this shapefile into a new shapefile. When we do it, it'll keep all of this data, and then we won't be editing our raw GMU shapefile. We'll have a new shapefile that then we can start adding fields and deleting things and working with. So now that we've got this join done, go up to your subunits, right click, I clicked too many times, right click and go Data, Export Features. So the feature we're exporting is this shapefile. Again, go to this folder to tell it where you want to store it. So I have my hunting regulations folder that I made, and this is going to be the modified data. And I already have some files in here, but this one is actually contains records from 2000 to 2011. So that's what I'm going to call it. Moose hunts 2000, 2011 underscore. So moose underscore hunts underscore 2000 underscore 2011, and hit save. And I don't need to mess with any of these other things, just hit save. Okay. All right. So since I don't really want to mess with my original data, I'm just going to remove this. It's safe, sound, it's gone. All right, so let's look at the table for this moose hunts that we just made. Okay. Actually, I'm going to leave that other data on there. So if you make a mistake and take something off that you want, just hit this undo button up at the top. So I'm going to hit undo, but I am going to go to the attribute table here and look at this and remove this join just to get it off of here. So you go to your subunits, open your attribute table, joins, remove all joins, and it takes it away. Okay. I'll just close that and turn this one off, and it can just sit there. We won't touch it. So here is our new shapefile. All right, so I'm going to sort by GMU here. All right, so I really want to get rid of all of these GMUs that don't have any data. And I can tell which ones don't have any data because they don't have a year assigned to it at all. All right, so I'm going to select by attributes, and I'm going to go to year, and when year is equal to 0, I'm going to hit OK. All right, and these are places where we have absolutely no data. So we are going to want to delete all these records. So hit delete, makes our data set smaller, and then go up to table. or actually edit, let's go to table and then hit save. All right. So it looks like we are focusing on these game management units for our analysis. One thing to notice is that in the data that we joined, if we go back to it, so go open and look at it, notice I had multiple, 19A records. I had year 2000, 2001, 2003. However, when I come over to our new shapefile where we did the join, I only have one record, 19A, year 2000. That is important because you dropped all that other data. I'm going to drag this so we can see what we're talking about here a little easier. It's important to remember when you're doing joins and thinking about the relationships between two tables, is it a 1-to-1? So there's one line in here for 19A, there's one line in here for 19A, or is it a one line to many? In this case, it's one record, one polygon for 19A here, to many records in our data. So these were all dropped. So if we wanted to get all this information into this table, we're going to have to change how this table looks. We need to change this table so that we have one record for 19A and all the rest of these years go across the top. So thinking about your data and thinking about your joins is very important. This data here right now is in what's called a long format. So we have GMU represented multiple times for every single year there was, in this case, a hunt. This is long. What we want to actually have this as is a wide format. So we want one record for 19A and we want the years to go across the top and we want it to be filled in with our hunts. Fortunately, ArcGIS has now added a tool so we can do that pretty easily. Alright, but before we do that, I'm going to clear the records here. This little thing is clear the selection. We don't want anything highlighted. I'm going to clear, and this table too, clear. So this data that we actually have on here is nonsensical. It only represents 1 year, and it's really not what we're interested in. So I'm going to clean it up right away. Clean, clean, clean. Always keep your data clean, and get rid of these fields because we really don't want them. So right click on it and hit delete. Yes, I want to permanently delete that. Because then later you'll come back and you're like, oh, what does this data mean? So we don't want it. We don't have to think about it. Delete, right click and delete frequency. Click, right click, and delete. All right. Okay, so here we go. We have our table. So we're dealing with 29 game management units versus the 73 we had before. All right, so we have this data. So what we want is we want to do a pivot table. Excel does this all the time, but now we can do it in ArcGIS. So we want to pivot it. So we have game management unit, one row for each game management unit. Year goes across the top, and we want our hunts as the meat of the table. So go up to Analysis, go to Tools, and now search for Pivot, and hit Enter. There we go. Pivot Table. Click on that. All right, our input table is going to be our GMU moose hunts. So select it. Okay, the input field, now see, it warned us that we have one record selected. So if I went through with this, I would only summarize by one record. Bad. I want to go through it and I want to clear this. So make sure you have no records selected. Hit clear. All right, now we've got to do it again. Go up to Tools, Pivot Table, click in there, hit Enter, and here it is. All right, so this thing doesn't collapse and go away for me again. I'm going to go up here and click on this pin. And now it's pinned. So if I click off of it now, I won't lose it. I can click anywhere and it stays. So our input table is our GMU moose hunts. Our input field is going to be that game management unit, GMU. That's the one that we want a single record going down. Our pivot field is going to be year. That's the one we want to pivot up across the top of our data set, and our value field is going to be our hunts. We want this to be the meat of the data. And so I'm fine just calling it GMU Moose Hunts Pivot Table and hit run. Okay, so let's take a look at what that looks like. Go over to it, highlight it, right click, open. Yay! We can see we have one row for now 19A, and the years go right across the top. One row for 19B, years go right across the top. I can look down here and I can see there's 35 records. Let's look at how many records are in our shape file here. So go over here, right click, go to attribute table. 29. So there are more records in our pivot table than what there are in our moose hunts. Peculiar. So that means that there are game management units in our data that we don't have spatial information for. So I'm going to clear this. One way that we can figure that out is by, again, joining the data and seeing, of these 35 records, only 25 of them are actually in our GIS data, our shapefile here. So why don't we join this table here to our moose data, and where it doesn't join, that means we have no spatial information and that data is going to be lost. So with our moose hunts pivot table highlighted, selected here, let's do the join again. Go up to table, join, add join. So our join table, move this out of the way, is going to be our shape file. So this moose hunts 2000 through 2011, this. So we'll select it, moose hunts right here. The join field, the two that they have in common in this table, remember it's game management unit. And in the other table, it was called game management unit. Let me just take a look at this. Moose, we actually want moose hunts 2000_2011. And it's unit subunit. So I kind of got to be careful because I have this moose data here, but what we want is this moose hunts. So the unit subunit. Okay. And now we'll hit OK. I'll move this to the side, and you'll see this is the table right here that we're joining to. It's the input table, and we're going to have the information from this table is going to be added. So let's go back to our GMU Moose Hunts pivot table, and we're going to see some fields show up here when we hit OK. All right, so we can see our spatial data is now there, and we have these nulls. Where these nulls occur mean that there was no spatial data found. So let's sort here by unit subunit. Let's click on it, right click, and go to sort ascending. These have no spatial information because there's no data that was joined. So if we look at it, 19Z, 20Z, 21Z, 22Z, you know, there's a pattern here. All these Z ones aren't found within our spatial information. So let me go make this smaller. I'm going to come back up to our shapefile here. Let's put those labels back on so we can see what those game management units are. So go over to your layer, right click, and go to label properties. Label properties, and it should come back on, and go down to unit, subunit. There we go. So Make sure labeling is turned on. I can see, notice that little highlighted box around it. If I click on it, it goes away. Right click and go to label, turn it back on. If for some reason it wasn't working, go up to labeling here and make sure that the field is that unit, subunit. And you'll see there's no 22Z. There is a 23Z. The Z's are when you just have one big game management unit that has not been broken up. At one point in time, when Alaska was smaller, 24 used to be all of one game management unit. So there did used to be a 24Z. There did used to be a 25Z. That was a long time ago. This breakup happened more recently. But sometimes hunters will just put down that they hunted in Unit 20A, and you don't know if it's A, B, D, E. So sometimes it just gets assigned a Z. So for now, we're going to lose that data because we really don't know where these people were at all. All right. So I'm going to just leave that data there because it's, you know, there's no harm in keeping it. We're just not going to use it. When we do that join, it's not going to be connected to anything in our spatial data because it's null. So I'm going to clear. And let's remove this join. It's just kind of messy. We really don't need it here. And data management, data management. So with this table highlighted, go up to joins and remove all joins. Say yes, and it should disappear. It's gone. All right. So now, before we do any more work, you know, getting this into a spatial data set, let's do our calculations that we need to do. So we're interested in the average number of hunts. And what I like to do, hunting changes very much from year to year. Whether, you know, you could have a horrible winter storm come through and people just don't get out, you know, moose hunting harvest is affected. The next year could be wonderful and great. So it's highly variable. Given that our harvests, our regulations occurred over 2004, 5, 6, 7, so these 4 years, let's take the average of the 4 years prior, the average of the 4 years with the moose regulations in place, the cow hunts, and then the 4 years after. All right, so to do that, we're going to need to add some fields to our database to reflect these averages. So go to add, here it's add a field, and down here let's call this pre-cow hunt. So HNT. Remember, you're limited to the number of characters that you can use. If I just kind of kept typing, well, it should give me an error. You can't have really long names here. So I'm just going to say pre-cow hunts. We'll see if it lets me do that. This alias is where you can have longer names, but I'm just going to again call it pre-cow hunts. And it's going to be an average, so I'm going to turn this into a double. That way we can have decimal points, even though it doesn't make sense to harvest part of a moose. You're going to harvest it all, but we'll leave it for double right now because it's an average. I'm going to add another field. I want you guys to call this cow hunts. So these are during the years when the liberal cow hunts were in effect. Cow hunts. Tab and call it double. Click to add another field, and we'll call this post cow hunts. Tab, post cow hunts. Hit tab and select double. All right, then I'm going to go up to save and save this. All right, let's close this down. We don't need this. Okay. So we want to calculate these fields and get what is the average moose hunts for these years, the hunts years, what is the average for these 4 years, and the post is going to be the average for these 4 years. So go to pre-cow hunts and right click and go to calculate field. All right, so we have this table highlighted. So this table shows up right there. We have our field highlighted. that we're wanting to edit, because when we right-clicked on it, it selected it. Again, ignore this Python. But okay, so what we're going to do is click on this sliding thing, and we're going to want to make sure that we can see year 2000, 2001, 2002, and 2003. So go into this little box, because this is where you're going to write your formula. We want pre-cow hunts to equal. Click in there and put a parenthesis. Then go up here and double click on year 2000. Go over here and click the plus sign. And then go back up, double click 2001, go back to plus, 2002, plus, and 2003. All right, so we're adding up those 4 years. Close it with a parenthesis. We're going to divide by 4. So that will give us the average. And we'll hit OK. All right, let's do the same thing for the cow hunt period. So right click, field calculate. All right, it still has our formula in here. I just click on it and highlight it and delete. So we'll put our parenthesis back in there. And this time we want the cow hunt years. So we want 2004, double click, plus 2005, plus 2006, plus 2007. All right, click in here, close our parenthesis, divide by, and then click in here and put a 4. All right, we'll hit OK. Ah, it gave us an error. Okay, so remember I mentioned null values are very important. Do we want a null value? What does that null value mean? Does it actually mean 0? Does it mean something else? Well, in our case, it does actually mean 0. When there's a null value, there were no moose hunted. There were no hunts, no harvests. So we got to take care of this. All right, we'll close this error. So where are these null values occurring? They're within the years that we're adding up here, so somewhere between 4, 5, 6, and 7. So let's do a sort. Let's go to year 2004, right-click, and sort descending. Okay, so 2004 doesn't have any nulls. I don't see any. I can see some nulls over here. Let's check 2005. Click on 2005, hit a sort, ascending. 2005 is good. Let's check 2006, click, go to sort ascending. Here's where we have some problems. So I'll show you 2 different ways to correct for this. First we could do is select by attributes. So let's do that for this column, select by attributes. Click on that. And so what we're interested in is we click here, so when year 2006 is null, that's the data we want to find. So year 2006 is null, hit OK. All right, so we have a total of 5 records here out of 35 that are null. So we want to make these zeros because in fact they should be zeros. There were no moose harvested, no hunts either. So right click and go to calculate field. Erase our previous formulas and just hit 0. We want these to be zeros. So hit OK. Now it's only going to calculate these selected records. If you accidentally have all your data selected or don't have any data selected, this will overwrite all of your data and effectively destroy it. So it's very, very careful when you're doing field calculating, when you're editing your data, to make sure you have the right things selected. So we only have 5 records selected. We're feeling confident that we want these to be zeros. So hit OK. All right, they're all zeros. Okay. Another way that we can do this is let's go on to year 2007 and let's again sort by descending, or ascending, sorry. And we can see, all right, these are nulls. Another way that you can do it is you can double click on this null and just hit 0 and then enter. See, it filled it in with 0. Double click on null, hit 0, enter, 0, enter, 0, enter. This is more tedious. This only really works if you only have a few records. So we've now made all of these zeros. You need, though, to remember to go and save those edits that you made. They're not saved automatically. When you do the field calculator, once you hit go, it is done. For this, if I didn't want to save these and I made a mistake, I could discard. But we're confident we're good, so we have to remember to do save. If you don't remember to do save, sometimes you're going to get some errors later. Alright, so 2008, let's do the same thing, sort ascending, and it's only a few, so I'm just going to hit zeros in here, 0, enter, 0, enter, and go up and hit save. Alright. So now we want to go back and redo our calculations because we got errors, and these really should have numbers to them. So remember to clear your selected records. And let's recalculate these average cow hunts. So go over to that, right click, calculate field. And all right, let's put in our formula, parentheses. We're calculating the average of when the cow hunts occurred, 2004 plus 2005 plus, double click 2006 plus 2007. Click in here, close the parenthesis, divide. You can either go up here and hit this divide, or I just hit divide on my keypad, and then hit 4 and hit OK. All right, so now we want to do the same for cow hunts. Right click. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to sort these to see if there's any more nulls that we might run into here. So we're all good. We shouldn't have a null problem again. So I'm going to click on this column, go to field calculate, delete what I have here, parenthesis. All right, so now it's 2008 plus 2009 plus 2010 plus 2011. Click in there, close parentheses, divide by, click in here and put 4 and hit OK. Okay. All right. So now we have what are the average hunts before the cow hunt, during the cow hunt, and after the cow hunt. I'm looking at 2082Z and down, up, down. We can kind of look at this data and it looks interesting. Okay. All right, so I'm going to clear this. The other thing that might be useful is looking at the percent of harvests within each game management unit. So what percent of hunts or harvests came out of 20F? What percent came out of 22D? Because if we want to give this to policy people, we got to think about what might be the best way to visualize this. I can see 3 different ways. I can see looking at the number of hunts or harvests. I can see looking at the percentage of a yearly harvest. And the other thing I can see is looking at the difference. So how many hunts or harvests, what was the change between pre-cow hunts and post-cow hunts? So first, let's look at the percentages. So for this, what we need to do is we want to say what is the percent of moose that were harvested from 22Z, for example, during this pre-cow hunts phase. So 8.5 moose out of the total moose in this column that were harvested during this time period. So in order to find out what are the total moose harvested, or the moose hunts, during this time period, you click on it, right click, and go to statistics. Alright, so now we can see for this pre-cow hunts, there were a total of 11,636 hunts that occurred. So I'm going to double click on here because I'm lazy and I don't really want to write this down. I'm going to double click on it, highlight it, right click, and say copy. Alright, so I'm going to come back over to our table, not that one, our data table here, and I'm going to clear this selection. So I'm going to add 3 fields I want percentage fields for the percentage of pre-cow hunts, percentage for cow hunts, and percentage for post-cow hunts. So again, go to add. And I'm going to say, click on field, say percent cow hunts. I gotta think about this. As it gets tricky, as you get more and more complicated. So percent pre-C hunts, and that's because we really are limited in how many characters that we can have. But for this, I can be longer. Here, I can say percent PR, percent pre-cow hunts. I can spell it out here in this alias because it can be as long as I want. And I'm going to make this a double. So add another field, click down here, and here is going to be percent. For this we can just say cow hunts, and then cow hunts, tab, make it a double. And here I can be like percent post, I'm going to say PST C hunts. Here I'm going to be percent post cow hunts. I can be longer there, and I'll change this to a double. Okay, alright, so I've added these three fields. I can go up here and I can hit, see this fields is highlighted. If I was like on insert, you're like, oh, how do I save this? Go up to fields here and then save. Alright, so we can close this, click the X. Alright, so now we're ready to do some field calculating. Okay, so I've already lost my statistics, but oh, they're over here. So I can double click on this and it'll bring it back up. So the total moose harvested in that pre-cow period was 11,000 and some moose. So I'm going to copy, come back to our table, and come back to our percent pre-cow hunts, right click, and say calculate field. So I'm going to delete what we had in here before, and so I'm going to put a parenthesis, and I want that cow hunts, so number of pre-cow hunts divided by, now I'm going to paste in here what we had before. I'm just going to Control V. But we need to get rid of this comma. This comma will mess things up. It'll make it a character and it'll throw us an error. So I delete the comma, close parenthesis, multiply. So you could either hit this asterisk or the asterisk on your keyboard. 100. That turns it into a percent. So hit OK. So now we're calculating, in this example, 4 cow hunts is what percent of the overall cow hunts, the overall hunts for that year. And very small, less than 1% were harvested out of this game management unit. We don't have it joined to our shapefile yet, so it doesn't highlight, but we're getting there. GIS analysis is multi-processes. It takes time. Okay. So we'll clear. We want to do the same thing for this cow hunts. First, we need to figure out how many cows hunts occurred during this phase. So right-click. Go to statistics, and we jumped up to 13. So let's copy this, go back to our table, and we're going to do a field calculator on the percent cow hunts. Right click, go to field calculate, and again we can delete what we have here, put a parenthesis. So now we want the cow hunts, so the number of cow hunts divided, paste that in there. Really funny. So see this number here, get rid of this comma, close the parenthesis, multiply, click back in here by 100. And so we're looking at what is the percentage for each row, that cow hunt based out of all the hunts for that year. Hit OK. Alright. And we do the same thing for the post period. So we got to figure out first what is the total harvest. So right click, go to statistics, And we see it's around 12,500. Highlight, copy. I'm going to close some of these down because it's getting busy. Alright, we've got our table back. Go to your percent post cow hunt. Right click. Go to calculate field. Delete that out. Parentheses. Go to your post cow hunts. Divide by. Control V or paste. Get rid of that comma. Close your parenthesis. Multiply by 100. Alright. So, any guesses as to where the most hunts occurred? And we can figure it out by clicking on, say, one of these rows and right-clicking and go sort decreasing. This has the most cow hunts, and 27% of the hunts occurred in this game management unit. And what would that be? 20B. Okay. What was the most popular during the cow hunt period? Let's sort. Not 20B. 20A. So yeah, you could give a report to someone and say, okay, the most popular game management units switched from 20B to 20A and then back to 20B again, because they did. But that doesn't mean much to people. They would rather see a map, see what's going on here. Okay? So let's clear. And now we have this lovely data set that we can link to our spatial data and we can view. Okay. So remember, we have this game management unit field. Each game management is only represented once. Let's sort and look at it. Looks good. Okay. And remember, we're going to lose some of these, which we're okay with. 19Z is going to drop out. 20Z is going to drop out. All right, so remember, clear, because if we have records selected, it's only going to join those selected records. So let's close this table. Let's close this table. Let's go to our shapefile. Let's open the attribute table for there. And now we're going to want to do a join by, we can either use this unit subunit or this GMU. It doesn't matter. So have your table highlighted, go up to table, joins, add a join. Okay, so we have our GMU, and the table that we're wanting to join is the one that we were just dealing with all of our data. And I believe it was this Moose Hunts pivot, so I could go over here, right click, and just open it and make sure. Yep, this is what we want to join. So we select that as the join table here. GMU Moose Hunts pivot table. All right. And they actually now both have a column called GMU, and so that's the one that's going to link them together. Hit OK. Alrighty. So now let's close down that, and here's our shapefile. And now we have all of this wonderful data together spatially. I can tell that we have a join because there's this object ID with a dot. And when I hover over these, you can see that it puts first the table and then the name of the column. So this is actually from this GMU Moose Hunts pivot table that we joined. If we go over to this GMU, it's actually from the shapefile that it came from. So joins are just kind of temporary in this case. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually export this as a new shapefile to just save it, because we want to keep this information together. So nothing's selected. I'm going to close this out. I'm going to go up here and again export this file. And later we'll probably want to delete this file just because we don't want to get so much stuff on our computer. So I'm going to call this version 2. One tip and trick is that instead of typing everything out, because again I'm lazy, I can just click on this and notice how my name changes down here. I don't have to retype everything. So I actually want to name the file the same, but I want to call it V2. So Moose Hunts V2. So save. And then hit OK. Alright, so we have this here and our new file. We look at the attribute table and yay, our data is there. Alright, clean up your data set. Now I'm getting these, oh, I have GMU _1. Oh, I don't really want that. These are here because they came from the joined data set. They're duplicates, so we want to delete them. We don't want messy data. So right click and go delete. Right click and delete. Alright. Alright. So now let's just kind of visualize what our data looks like. So I want to see what this looks like. Let's say the pre-cow hunts. I want to just look at the total number of hunts. So let's go to our layer, right click and go to symbology. And we will select graduated colors. And then we're going to select our pre-cow hunts. So we're just looking at the total cow hunts before these regulations went into effect. I want to have, let's go with 7 categories actually. Alright, so I can look at this and I can see that we had between one game management unit had 18 hunts to it, while another one had over 3,100. And let's label these so we can see what game management units they were. So label, there you go, turn on the labels, and I'm going to have to go up to labeling here, and I'm going to have to tell it, label it by unit subunit. Alright, so 20B has the most moose harvested, or moose hunts. Okay, these other ones are pretty skimpy. Alright, so that's your pre-cow hunts. Let's take a look at what the cow hunts look like when the regulations were in effect. Okay, now 20A kind of pops up there. 20B is still pretty popular. Let's go down post cow hunt. Look at the total number of hunts. Okay, still pretty popular here and there. Okay, so it's a little bit hard to visualize, you know, what's happening pre-hunt phase and after the hunt phase. One thing that's happening here is, I don't know if you noticed as we flip through, is for this, our max is 3,600. If we change to the cow hunts period, our max is 3,800. And if we go to the pre, our max is 31. So we're not really comparing apples to apples with our symbology. If we really wanted to look at this appropriately, what we would do is we would make a standardized classification here. So what we could do is double click on this and say 50. You could say this one is 200. Actually, yeah, I'll do 100. 100. 200. Make this 500. Make this 1,000. We can make this 1,500. Double click, enter, and then kind of leave that one there. So, all right. So now what we can do is, this is pre-cow hunts. We can copy this and let's paste it in our map. So click on map, right click, and say paste. All right. But now for this layer, let's change what this is. So right click on it, go to symbology, and instead of pre-cow hunts, let's choose cow hunts, and let's give it those same categories that we see here. So remember, we did 50, we did 100, we did 200, we did 500, we did 1,000, we did 1,500, 500, 500, 1,000. This one we did 15, and we just let the other one go. Okay. All right. I'm going to turn the labels off on this because we're having label duplication. All right, so now this one is labeled with roughly kind of the same scale. Then, you know, this goes up higher. And maybe we can better compare apples to apples. So we'll turn it on and off. Oh, and we see that during the pre-cow hunt, more light colored, less light colored here. And when we do have the cow hunts, these kind of get to have fewer hunters. You know, this over here stays pretty solid. So you can kind of see. However, I think this is really difficult to try to visualize. You know, I can copy this again and do a paste, and let's do this on the post cow hunts. So that's our third and final time period. So post cow hunt, and do the same categories: 50, 100, 200, 500, 1,000, 1,500. Okay, so now it's kind of classified the same. I can tell what's being displayed because we have pre-cow hunts, we have cow hunts, and we have post-cow hunts. So let me turn this one on now. Okay. I can see, looking at this, that there's fewer hunters in, like, 21E becomes less. 21C becomes a lot less populated. 21B becomes more populated, it becomes darker. So I can kind of toggle between these and see what happens. But again, it's kind of hard to visualize. I don't think this is the way I would present this to the audience if I was trying to visualize how hunting changed. Okay. So what I would recommend, we can also look at the percentages. So if we go into each one of these and change it to a percent, this is pre-cow hunts. So let's change this to the percent of pre-cow hunts. So we could go percent pre-cow hunt. And I'm just going to see what the range of data is. So this goes from 0.1% to 27%. Let's check this guy out, this layer out. And this, instead of cow hunts, we want it to be percent cow hunts. So this one goes up to 29%. And let's try the post cow hunts. Click on that. And let's look at the percentage of post cow hunts. And this one goes up to 29. So again, we kind of want to standardize how these are displayed. So let's say that this would be 0.5. Oh, 0.5. Just kind of looking at the other ones. 2.5. Let's say 5. 10. That was kind of weird. Okay, click off of it. Let's say, hey, now 1, 2, 3. It's deleting my layers here, so it kind of creates a problem. You have to go back to natural breaks and get your 7 categories back. It's just an oddity with ArcGIS. So 0.5. Let's do this one at 1. Let's do this one at 2.5. You can see success rates, well, it's pretty low. These aren't success rates. This is just the percent of hunters within each game management unit. So this one we will do at 5. This one we'll do at 10. This one I'm going to change to 15. This one I'll change to 10. Okay, so we've got 0.5, 1, 2.5, 5, 10, 15. Okay, so let's change these other ones to match. Click on it. And I might start from the bottom here, so I might make this one here 15. And this one 10. And this one 5. 2.5. 1. And 0.5. Okay. Let's go to the last one here. Click on that. Come over here and make this 15. This one was 10. This one was 5. This one was 2.5. This one was 1. This one was 0.5. Okay. So let's look at our percentages and see how they've changed. So here's the pre-cow hunts. The largest percent is out of this 20B, and that's going to be, it looks like, the 27 percentage one right here. The next big ones are 20A, 20D, 20E. So let's click on when the cow hunts were happening. Now you can kind of see some shifting. You can see 20A gets darker and more populated. 20E gets less populated. 25C also gets less, so there's less hunts over in this area. And I'm just looking at the other areas here. These, also tend to get less hunters over here. So when we turn on the cow hunts, these start to go down. This area starts to light up. And what happens after the cow hunts are over with? We start to see some spreading back out. We start to see darker colors here, darker colors here. 21D gets darker. So they're out, they come in, and now the hunts are going back out. So, that might be a good series of maps to do, looking at the percentages. One way that I might look at this, and this will be the final way that we do it, is you could look at just what is the change in the number of hunts. And so let's open up one of these files. These are all actually the same file, so when we update this layer, all these others will update with it. It's the same file, we just copied and pasted. So what I want to do is I want to look at the change in the number of hunters between the pre-period and the cow hunt period, and then the change in hunters from going from the cow period to after the hunts. So we need to add 2 columns. So we're going to go to add a column, add a field, and for here, let's call this pre-hunt change. So pre-hunt change. And I'm just going to leave it long because, really you can't have half of a hunt. And then we want post-hunt change. Oh, and now it's giving us a warning because that is way too long. See, this red box means too many letters. So I'm going to get rid of maybe this O. There we go. Now we're okay. But here we could put post-hunt change. And we're fine. I'm going to leave those both as long and hit save. Okay. Close this. So let's go over to those columns. Alright, pre-hunt change. So we want to look at what's the difference in the hunts during the cow period versus the pre-cow period. Alright, so what we're going to want to do is come over here and do our field calculate again. Right click, field calculate. And so we're going to want to subtract the number of hunts during the cow phase minus the number of hunts that happened prior. So in this instance, positive values will reflect increases in the game management unit from the pre-cow hunt phase. Negatives will indicate losses of hunts when we switch to the cow hunt period. Okay, so just hit OK. And we do the same now for this post-hunt change. Right click, go to field calculate. However, this time we want to look at the change from the post-cow hunt. So we want post-cow hunt minus what happened during the cow hunt phase. So in this case, positive would indicate, again, during the post-cow hunt, there's more hunts within a game management unit, and negative would indicate places that lost hunts when that cow hunt went away. So we hit OK. Okay. Here we go. So remember I said these other tables will automatically be updated. We can just validate that by looking at the attribute table. There it is, it's there. All right. So now maybe I want to display this new information that we proposed. So I'm just going to leave these guys here, turn them off. I'm going to copy this one, and copy any of them, copy, and I'm going to paste again. All right, and now for this one, I'm going to change the symbology to look at that new field we calculated. So I'm going to look at pre-hunt change. So this is going to tell me negative indicates where hunters left from, and positive indicates where they went to during the cow hunts. So let's turn this on. And you can see we have negatives, negatives, negatives. For me, it's easier to see when like the negatives say maybe are red and the positives are a different color. So I'm going to click this center one and have the upper value be a cutoff of 0. So anything above this is positive, anything below this is negative. And I want the negatives to be, let's just choose a different color here. Actually, I'm going to go back. You can actually just right click on this symbology and we could pick some purples here. So actually this is where you lost the most hunters, so I'm going to make it a dark purple. I'm going to make this the next purple, and this the next purple. All right. And actually this is also a minus because we can see it's minus 0 to 55. So these are places where we lost hunters, and then these are places where we gained hunters. So let's make them orange. So we're going to go from light orange, right click, that orange, to dark orange. And oh goodness, now we can see some of our biggest losses were out here in 23. I'm going to turn on those labels for this one. Label. There we go, 23Z. Our biggest increase was going to 20A. We had an increase of, it looks like, 2,200 hunts in that area. 20B lost a lot. 20D actually did gain some, but now we can easily see places where we had losses and places where we had gains. So when the cow hunts happened, you saw an explosion here in 20A. And so what happened when the cow hunts went away? Again, I'm going to copy this and paste it. And we're going to change this to the post hunt. So we'll come over here and say post. All right. Now we got to mess with our values here, so I'm going to again put a 0 here. Okay, and so we have purples representing our negatives here. We have oranges representing our positives here. All right, so it looks like some of the biggest losses now were 20A, and I'll turn this off because we have duplicate labels. But it looks like most people shifted to 20B was the most popular. It gained 636 hunters, and someone out to 20E and 20A here, 20D and 20E. You know, you did have some people going back out to these other rural areas, but you know, this might be the best way to show the effects of the cow hunts as far as what it did to hunts. Okay, so now that I've walked you through that, and you've taken a look at that and hopefully walked through it, I want you to do the exact same thing, but I want you to use this moose harvest table that we did. So we have this harvest table, and so I want you to walk through, and I want you to go through the whole pivot table. I want to see these exact same fields that are in this pivot table hunt. So I want you to go through and add on there post cow hunts, but this would actually be kills. For, you know, I want all of these fields done again, but you're going to be using kills. So it's going to represent kills instead of hunts. Okay? And then you're going to have a final shape file like this moose hunts. I'd like you to zip that up and send that to me. So we could pretend that we're done, and we could pretend that, okay, we went through and we made our moose kills file. So we can save our project. What you would do is you'd close this down and you go to your folder where you saved your data, and I would always sort by name. And we could pretend that, you know, this was your moose kills, and for you it would be 2000 to 2001. Remember, click and highlight all of these, right click, either add to archive. If you do that, it lets you do a zip, and then call it moose kills 2000, 2011, and then your last name, and hit OK. Or you can highlight these, right click, and go to send to compressed zip folder, and then kind of click on it and change it to the appropriate name, and then put your last name on it, and then upload this file. Alright, that would be the exercise. So we walk through hunts, and you'll do the exact same procedure using the kills. Alright.